Welcome back, everyone. Okay, today we're diving into this explainer to explore a seriously mind-bending hypothetical. It kind of sounds like the plot of a sci-fi movie, but it's actually deeply rooted in the fundamental chemistry of our planet. We're asking the question, what would happen if all the oxygen on Earth just completely disappeared for exactly 5 seconds? It's this wild thought experiment, and as you'll see, it reveals just how incredibly fragile our everyday reality really is. Picture this. You wake up tomorrow, you're going about your normal morning routine, and then, completely without warning, an invisible countdown begins. The entire planet loses all of its oxygen for exactly 5 seconds. Tick, 4, 3, 2, 1. I mean, in a grand scheme of a 24-hour day, 5 seconds is absolutely nothing. It's what, the time it takes to yawn, maybe stretch your arms, or pour a quick cup of coffee? So, since 5 seconds is just so incredibly brief, you might be thinking to yourself, well, that sounds totally harmless, right? I mean, most of us can hold our breath underwater for, 30 seconds to a minute without even breaking a sweat. If I told you to just hold your breath right now for 5 seconds, you could do it easily. So naturally, our gut reaction is to kind of shrug this off as a fun but ultimately harmless little cosmic glitch. But here's the catch. The fatal error in our thinking is that we treat oxygen merely as just the invisible stuff that goes into our lungs. We completely forget that it is literally woven into the very fabric of our environment. The gap between what we think would happen and what the planet would actually experience, it's literally the difference between a mild inconvenience and an absolute full-blown catastrophe. So let's track how this whole thing builds, second by agonizing second, because this rapidly escalates from a sudden struggle to catch your breath into absolute chaotic destruction. In just a handful of seconds, we aren't just dealing with a lack of air anymore. We are watching the literal physical breakdown of the world around us. Let's break down exactly what happens during this frantic countdown. Okay, the absolutely crucial point to remember here is that oxygen is a massive component of our atmosphere. It's not just floating around waiting for us to inhale it, it physically makes up a huge portion of the sky above us, meaning its sudden absence would trigger an immediate atmospheric collapse. Since so much of the atmosphere's volume would just vanish in a flash, the air pressure would drop dramatically, like instantly. And get this, oxygen particles in the air are actually what helps scatter sunlight to give us our beautiful blue skies. So take the oxygen away, that bright daytime sky goes pitch black in an instant. And think about anyone traveling. Airplanes mid-flight completely rely on that atmospheric pressure. Without it, they'd lose cabin pressure in the blink of an eye, causing incredibly serious life-threatening problems for everyone on board. But honestly, down on the ground, things get even worse. And it's all due to chemical bonds, which reveals oxygen's hidden double life. This is where the science gets really fascinating and, frankly, a little bit terrifying. You see, oxygen isn't just a gas we breathe. It is a vital chemical binding agent. It creates the invisible forces that hold solid materials together. It's literally the invisible glue holding our entire modern world together, which, as you're about to see, is absolutely terrible news for your daily commute. Because without those oxygen-based bonds locking materials together, the massive concrete buildings in our cities would instantly begin to fracture and crack all around us. Just think about the sheer volume of concrete in any modern city. We're talking the sidewalks, the bridges, the towering skyscrapers. Every single bit of that relies on oxygen to remain solid. So for 5 terrifying seconds, the very ground beneath our feet and the walls around us would completely lose their structural integrity, literally crumbling to dust under their own massive weight. And the sheer scale of this failure becomes blazingly obvious when you look at transportation. Because combustion engines fundamentally require oxygen to run, to actually combust, millions of cars, trucks, and planes would lose power at the exact same moment. Just picture a busy highway at rush hour. Every single fuel-powered engine abruptly cuts out. Dead. You'd have the total, complete paralysis of global transit. It would instantly silence the roar of modern life, turning our highways into massive parking lots of unpowered, coasting metal. So, we've seen the devastating impact on the sky, our cities, and our highways. But what about the oceans? What happens to the water that covers the vast majority of our planet? Well, as you can probably guess, if the land and the sky are falling apart, the oceans certainly aren't getting a free pass during this brief 5-second window. Remember basic chemistry? Water itself is fundamentally H2O, meaning it is literally one-third oxygen. Stripping that oxygen away leaves behind only highly volatile hydrogen gas.
So marine life wouldn't just be struggling to push water through their gills. The very liquid composition of their environment would undergo a sudden, profound chemical breakdown. The entire marine ecosystem across the globe would be thrown into this violently stressful state of shock as the oceans literally morph into gas around them.
Finally, the excruciating countdown hits zero. The 5 seconds are up and the oxygen abruptly rushes back to the Earth. You take a massive gasp of air. The pitch black sky instantly turns blue again. All those chemical bonds lock right back into place. You survived the 5 seconds. Phew, it's over. But is it really? Well, the terrifying reality is that this brief 5 second absence doesn't come with a magical reset button. The world would already be reeling from irreversible, massive damage, horrific accidents, and just permanent, utter chaos. Think about it. Those airplanes that lost cabin pressure, those millions of cars that suddenly lost engine power on incredibly crowded highways, or those skyscrapers whose concrete foundations cracked and crumbled to dust. Yeah, the oxygen returning doesn't just magically undo all that physical destruction that happened while it was gone. The aftermath would be, without a doubt, an unimaginable global catastrophe. It really all boils down to this perfectly stated, terrifying reality. Just 5 seconds without oxygen could change life on Earth forever. Honestly, it just perfectly highlights how deeply interconnected our natural environment is with our human-built world. We tend to separate the natural world, like the fresh air we breathe, from human infrastructure like giant concrete bridges or loud combustion engines. But at the end of the day, they are fundamentally bound together by the exact same invisible elements. So as we wrap up this explainer, the next time you take a simple, absent-minded breath, I want you to pause for a second. Truly appreciate the invisible foundation that is literally holding our world together. Because it's not just filling your lungs, guys. It's holding up the ceiling above you, it's keeping the sky blue, and it's powering all of human civilization. Which really leaves us with one final wild thought. If just 5 mere seconds of disruption to one invisible gas could permanently collapse modern society, what other unseen forces are we entirely dependent on without even realizing it? Definitely something to think about next time you take a deep breath. Thanks so much for joining me, and as always, keep your curiosity alive.